Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers. This is ANY 150. This is Module 1. And this is our high poly and low poly food can part 5. Now what we're going to do now is I want you to present your finalized models, and we're going to go ahead and put them side by side. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and click on the can and do a Control A until you see your channel editor and your layer editor. So you can see that we've got our high poly, we've got our low poly. Okay, I mean, it's just basically a cylinder. This is crazy, isn't it? We're gonna make the low poly look like this. Can you believe it? It's possible. You can do that. You're going to find out real quick how fun it is. So here's your high poly, right? Here's your low poly, and we're going to make your low poly look like your high poly by baking the high poly information onto the low poly object. It's an amazing process. It's really cool, and we'll take you through that. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to take and bake all this information via normal map onto this low poly. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to basically, do you really want to show off the low poly? I don't know. It's one of those things that I just want you guys to have on. So go ahead and turn that on. And what we'll do is, let me put the grid snap on, and let's move that over to the side. Let's move this over to the side. And let's just kind of have something that looks like this. They're kind of spaced apart a little bit. You can see that looks really good. Alright, so when we do finally get into going into, and this will be in Module 2, where we're going to go ahead and bake all the maps and go into, talked about going into Substance Designer, Substance Painter, I'm sorry, Substance Painter, and then working with Photoshop, and getting those maps finalized. But that's in Module 2, but right now let's just focus on this. We will still need to have these objects centered on top of each other, perfectly over, they're over top of each other, and you can't have any discrepancies like this. Okay, so we need to make sure that our low poly fits within the high poly, right? So they're right on top of each other. Okay, that's normal. That's what we need to have for the baking process to work properly. Okay, so that's kind of the prep work, but right now we're just going to show off our high poly model to the world. Basically, I just needed to grade. I need to be able to see your work. So what I need from you guys is a couple things. So we'll take you through the process of getting this lit, and we're going to show you how to get it all rendered, so I can get a couple renders and a couple screenshots from you guys. So I need basically one screenshot and basically one render from you guys when you turn stuff in. So keep that in mind. Alright, so let's put them side by side. Okay, I have grid snap on up here. You can see that. I've got my channel editor here, and I got my layer editor here. So, and if you don't see those, you have to select an object and do Control A until you see these channels. So you can see that you could be on this, attribute editor. That's what that's called, attribute editor, and do Control A, and that gets you to this. So it goes between either or. Okay, by just hitting the Control A. Alright, so we're going to be rendering in Arnold, and everything's looking pretty good. Just want to make sure this isn't hovering. Okay, I don't think it's hovering. So I think I am going to go ahead and make sure this is fixed, my low poly. So I'm going to right click and go to vertex mode and go to the side view or the front view here, and just marquee select the top faces of the low poly vertices, right? So right click over it, go to vertex mode, and then just move those down, and I'm going to turn off grid snap just for a little bit here, just so I can get that level with the high poly. Okay, alright. And I'm going to right click over it, go to selection mode, go into object mode again, and go back in here. Alright, so for a screenshot you can do basically I need basically 2 screenshots. So a screenshot, the way to do a screenshot is pretty easy. Let's go into the search bar, you can see at the very bottom, and type in S. And then you get what's called a snipping tool if you're working on Windows. Okay, Windows 10, that's what I have. So snipping tool, click on that, and that's a little app that allows us to basically give, take screenshots. And the way to do that is you just go to mode and then go into rectangular snip, and you just go ahead and just give me what you see. Just go ahead and snip this like that, and all you have to do is go to File and Save As, and I want you to save it as a JPEG. Okay, you have a choice, right? So save it to JPEG, and I want you to put your first name, your last name, and then I want you to go in here and type in, let's say, perspective, shade 01. Okay, and we probably want to put in here in our description, this is module 01, right? So I've got your first name underscore last name underscore mod underscore 01 underscore perspective PAERSP underscore shade underscore 01. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight that. Make sure it's going to your desktop. It's easier to find. That's why you see so much junk on my desktop. Control, I'm just going to do a Control C, highlight that, Control C. So I'm going to copy that. Whoops. Didn't want to do that. There we go, Control C. And that's copy. And let's go ahead and save that onto the desktop. You can see I just typed that in, or just kind of highlighted that, and then go ahead and save. Right? And then you're done with that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do wireframe unshaded. So to do wireframe unshaded, we need to go and click on this little guy here. And when I click on that, that gives me wireframe. Okay, wireframe unshaded. I want to do the same thing. Give me a snip. So S, snipping tool. Okay. I think this is the fun part. You got all the work done, so now you can show your work off. Okay, so now we're going to do another snip. There we go. And we're going to go File, Save As, same thing, pretty easy. And now I just go in here, Control V. Now that didn't work. Why didn't that work? I don't know. Sometimes that happens. So let's go in here and look for Module 1. There it is. I've got a bunch of these in here. And this time we're going to put in not shade, but we're going to put wireframe on there. Wireframe. There we go. And so it's the same thing. That's why I copied the last one. And it didn't work, so I had to find it on the desktop. And just type in your first name, last name, mod 01, persp, wireframe 01. So save that. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and turn wireframe off. And let's go ahead and we're going to render this. Okay. So that's the next thing we're going to do. So sometimes to get nice shadows, I want to get some nice shadows so we can see the object. It doesn't really do, Maya doesn't do a good enough job as far as I'm concerned. ZBrush does a better job at visualizing your work. Maya does not do a very good job. And so even if I go into Renderer, and this is a trick that I've told my students, tell my students right away, and it's one of the things you can do too. Even when I'm modeling, I put this on, but I didn't really do it the first time we modeled, but you guys can turn it on now, from now on, if you like it. If you want to use it, you can. It's the screen space ambient occlusion, and it does add a little depth to your work. You can see with it on and with it off. Okay, it's a little, I don't know, I'm not entirely excited about it, but You can go ahead and add more and less and just kind of play with it a little bit, but I would keep it at its preset. Okay, so just add a little bit of amount, and you can change the how it looks. And I would definitely turn the samples up if your video card, you have a good video card, turn that all the way up. Nothing beats a render. Okay, nothing beats it. So let's go ahead and get you set up for a render. Okay, even though ambient occlusion does help a little bit with shadows, but a real render is the best way to go. So let's go in under poly modeling now. We're going to go into the shelf. I'm going to create a plane. I'll go ahead and scale that up. This will just be kind of a background plane here. And it goes right on to the 0, 0 axis, so it should work unless your objects are not sitting on the ground, which this one is not. So I'm going to tweak this out and hold the Alt key and the down arrow and get that to the ground. There we go. So we don't want it hovering above the ground for sure. Okay. Alright, so let's go in here, and now we have a ground plane. Okay, now we need to add a material to this object, so I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to right click over this and go to assign new material. So again, just right click over the object that you have selected, right mouse button click, and go to assign new material. And in here we don't want to use just regular Maya shaders, we want to use the Arnold shader network. So let's go under Arnold shader, and then we're going to click on AI standard surface. That's basically, you're going to use that probably 95% of the time. Okay, it's a standard surface that actually gives you a lot of I mean, it's very powerful. It has a lot of attributes, and when we open it up I'll show you some of those attributes. Okay, so AI standard surface, and then this pops up. Okay, this is your attribute editor for that object. So let's go to AI standard surface and rename this immediately. So we're going to type in floor TX for texture and click enter. Just click the enter button. Right, the base. How this works is that this is the color, and we can create any color we want. Let's create something that's just kind of a pastel. We don't want anything super bright. And so let's just darken that a little bit, make it a little more pastel. Okay, we don't not want it super bright. We want to just focus on what we have here. And we want to keep these for purposes of just showing off your work and a model. Let's keep it gray, a gray color. The ground can be a different color. Let's keep that gray. So let's go ahead and add the AI standard surface to this object. So I'm going to click on the high poly, right mouse button click on it, and go to assign new material, and let's do the same thing. Click on AI standard surface, and in here we are going to type in something different. This is going to be the high poly can, and this will be TX, right? So high poly can TX, and the color of this is going to be gray. So let's go ahead and do a gray. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Okay, again, we're going to go basically counting from the black 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up, and that's the color we're going to have. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing for this guy right here. So you can go in here to assign new material. Again, go into Arnold shader and AI standard surface. Again, we need to rename it. This will be low poly texture. Just call it food can, and then we're gonna do texture on that. There we go. All right, so this color would be the same exact thing. So we're gonna we're gonna go into color, and we're gonna go up to this one here. And there we go. We have the same color. Alright, I'm going to turn the ambient occlusion off. Ambient occlusion has this weird, depending on how you tweaked it out. So I'm turning that off when I'm going to do my render, so I'm going to just turn that off. Or just make it just make it less, make the radius a lot less. There we go. Okay. Alright. So turn that off, and what we're going to do now is we're going to get we're going to render through our perspective camera. That's the easiest way. Eventually I'll show you how to use cameras and how to create those. But right now we're just going to use the perspective view. So let's go ahead and get the render settings set up, and that's what this is. So this is the render settings right next to this round. This is the hypershade. This is render settings. So I'm going to click on that. And here are my render settings. And if you don't see Arnold in here, that means it hasn't been loaded. Okay. So if you don't see in here, if you see the Maya hardware and you see Maya Vector and Turtle, but you don't see Arnold Renderer, what you'll have to do is you have to get it set up. So you'll have to go to Windows and Settings Preferences and Plugin Manager. So if there's something you can't see, it doesn't mean you have to reload Maya or uninstall Maya and reload it again. It may be just that you need to add it in here. Okay. So this is where all your plugins are, and you can see all the plugins that I have. And what you're looking for, and sometimes it's just hard to find, is you're looking for the Arnold render. Okay, and that may be very difficult to find, and sometimes you can't find it. So the best way to cope with that is just go ahead and load and auto load at the very top of this. Okay, and just scroll down until you get to the next one. Okay, load and auto load, load and auto load, right? Load and auto load. You can see that I've got most of mine loaded anyway. Load and auto load. There we go. Awesome, great. Alright, cool, awesome. So now you're good to go. So the next thing you're going to do is make sure you refresh. Okay, that'll refresh everything, and then go ahead and close it. Alright, so now when you go back in here, you should be able to see it. Now if you don't see it after doing all that, then yeah, you must have loaded up, installed Maya, and you didn't load the Arnold Renderer. So in that case, you're going to have to make sure that you reinstall Maya and make sure you check mark the Arnold Renderer. Usually I don't mess around with that stuff. I just let Maya load everything that it wants to load, and if it does give me the option to load all the plugins, definitely click all of them if you're not sure, right? Better to have more than you need than not enough. Alright, so there we go, Arnold Renderer. And so to set this up, we're going to keep it just at 3222, and we'll talk about how you can refine that later. So that's the main area here. The more samples you have, the cleaner the image will look. So in the camera AA, I just call that quality. That's your quality. So if you have graininess, turning it up to 4, 5, and even 6, which is extreme, will get rid of most of the graininess. And same thing with the diffuse and the specular. The problem with raising these, your render times will skyrocket. That means if you have a very slow computer and it doesn't have that great of a processor, it's going to have a hard time getting through all these processes. So keep that in mind, that when I first do my lighting, I just keep it really low. Okay, basically default. And that's what that is. The Comments tab. Alright, we're going to get into this deeper, but let's just focus on one thing, resolution, right? The thing you need to understand is that we're going through the camera, or excuse me, we're going through the perspective as a camera, and we don't need an alpha channel right now. We do not need an alpha channel, so go ahead and uncheck that. And we're going to keep it at HD 540 for our initial test renders. Okay, this will render faster, and we can tweak our lighting, and then we can come back, and then what our final resolution will be HD 1080. That's going to be our full res, and that's what I'm going to ask for all your final renders. When you are preview rendering for lighting, you always want to use HD 540. If you try to preview render with HD 1080, you're wasting your time because you're tweaking out lights, you're not doing a final render. So always do HD 540. This will save you time and make things go a lot faster. Okay, so with that said, that's where we need to be. There's nothing else special in here. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add lighting. Right now it's just going to render black. Let me show you. So if you want to render something, just go up here to this object here, this icon here. This is the render. Okay, and this will render out totally black. We already know this. There's no lights in the scene, and even Maya's telling me. Maya's smart enough knowing, warning, no lights in scene. Okay, so close that. So what we need to do is to get started. And the fastest way is to go to find the Arnold tab, the shelf. Okay. So Arnold is right here. You have to look for it. Sometimes they're not easy to see. Okay. But the one I'm going to go to mostly is polygon modeling and Arnold. Okay. All right. So if you are interested in moving these around, these tabs, you can't just move them, okay? You have to go into the shelf editor, okay? And you can see where they're at in here, and you can go in here, and a lot of times I will put the poly modeling right at the over here, or you could do it over here, whatever is wherever you would like to put them. So Arnold's too far over. It's hard to find. So what I'm going to do is I want to put it closer to poly modeling. I want to put poly modeling first. So let's go ahead and click on Arnold, because let's go ahead and select that. And let's move it up. Okay, you can see it moving up here. So you can see it moving. Let's click on the arrow up and move it all the way to the end. So it's a lot easier to find. Okay, and then we're going to take the poly modeling, okay, and we're going to move that up right next to Arnold. So this will be really easy. These two will be really easy to find from now on while we go through this course. Okay? And so I'm going to close that. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is now we know where Arnold is. These are the lights for Arnold. They're really cool. The ones that we're going to really focus on is just this one right here. Okay? This is the Arnold Sky Dome. I'm going to go ahead and just click on it one time, and we'll talk about it. Let's go ahead. And so the Sky Dome is just basically an invisible volume that pushes light. That it's actually we're using global illumination. So the light is being pushed out, kind of self-illuminating, and bounces around in your scene and creates a really cool scene. So let's go ahead and just render this out really quick to give you kind of an idea of what it's going to look like. So again, the render icon is right up here. There we go. And this will give us a full render. And some cool little shininess, which is kind of neat and fun. And this is what the Arnold AI standard surface looks with no tweaking, meaning that I just changed the color. We got a little reflection, and that's cool. That's fine. I don't mind reflection, but I don't want so much that it looks like a mirror. That's too much. So a little reflection is not it's natural for objects depending on what material they are, and we get a little bit of reflection off the floor, which is kind of cool. So it just gives you a sense of volume now and depth that we didn't have before. So that's why I asked for renders, even for just models. Okay. This helps me understand that you've done the modeling, and it gives you kind of some self-gratification that, wow, this really does look pretty good. So let's close that. While we're tweaking lighting too, as you can see, there are no shadows in that render, and you can see that it took quite a while to render. So there's another way to render. It's called preview rendering. It's not that much faster, but it does help you visualize a little bit quicker. So when you do a full render, this is what happens. Okay, so it's just breaking this render up in very small parts. Okay, all right, but it does give you a final image. All right, so there's another way. It's called preview rendering. Okay, Arnold. If you click on Arnold, you can go into render here, and this is the preview renderer for Arnold. Okay. Alright, so this is what that looks like. And it's really cool. I mean, it's doing it kind of a different way. It's not really scan line, but it's really kind of cool. And if you move and make a mistake and you dock something accidentally, like what I just did here, I docked it accidentally, I can just take it, click it, and move it back out. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller if I can. Sometimes these things are hard to do that. There we go. Come on. And let's just make it the size it really is. Alright, so there it is. And then I can go in here and you can rotate holding the Alt and the left mouse button. And you can see it's, depending on how fast your graphics card is, you can see it in real time. You know, my opinion is keep it in one spot, because when you try to rotate and do that, it does kind of freeze stuff up. Now, if you have a fantastic graphics card, and let me just tell you what I have. I have an older generation, but it's a 1080 Ti, but that's a fast card. Back in the day, that was it. That was the card. Now they have a 2080 Ti, and if you happen to have that, which I'm very jealous if you have one of those, by the way, send me an email. Tell me you have it, and I'll send you a really nasty email. No, just kidding. I'll be really jealous because I really want one, but they're very expensive. So this is all dependent on how fast your graphics card is. This is where it's pulling the graphics card memory, and the speed of your graphics card is being able to rotate around in here. And to me, yeah, it's okay. You can work this way if you'd like. It's kind of fun. If you can't, then don't. There's another way. So we click on this guy, click off of here. And if you want to stop this, let's say if I want to stop it, and I want to rotate, now you can see that it's not slowing my preview down in my perspective window. And I can turn it back on, and then it will re-render that. And sometimes this is how you get away from the glitching, right? You have to turn it off, right? Turn it off, turn the rendering off, and then rotate around and then start the render again. There you go. Alright, that's just another way. Alright, let's go ahead and close that. And there's another way. So we've got Renderer, and then we've got Arnold Renderer. Okay. And in here, in this option, we've got the preview window that actually takes this window and previews it. Just like that. Isn't that cool? And this is probably what I like the best. This is a lot more fun to render out. Now, it's not a final render. You can see that it's kind of scan lining it out, blocking it out, and it takes a while. It actually takes longer than your regular render does. Okay, but you're able to see it quicker. It refines it slower, but you can see the results. Okay, and they're pretty accurate. Alright, so let's go ahead and get that set up. Let's go ahead and turn that off for now. And that's probably the way we're going to go ahead and do these just real quick renders, get our lighting set up. Alright, so if we want to set our perspective, the only way to do that is to find out what our resolution is here. So we know it's an HD 540. So let me click on this guy right here. And this kind of masks out exactly, and it tells us what our resolution is, 960 by 540. So we have a lot of headroom and room for the bottom. Here's title safe. Excuse me. Right here is title safe. We want to have title safe on. Okay. So if we have title safe on, that's that guy with the T, the icon. If I zoom in, we want to make sure that our objects are within that title. Okay? You don't really want to go outside of that. And if you want to know if you're in the center, if you're properly in the center, you can also use the field chart. Okay? The field chart will kind of tell you what the center is, so I can go in here and just kind of center that a little bit more, a little bit better. I can turn that off and on. And then once you get that done, I always keep that title on. It's going to go ahead and do a render real quick. See how that looks. Okay, looks good. Okay, alright, so one thing we need to start tweaking out, and we can go ahead and turn this on. Okay, and you can see that how it changes. Is that our exposure, our intensity is at 1 right now. Let's go ahead and change that to something like 0.5. Okay, and that just kind of, you know, we had some really bright areas there. I don't mind light areas, but bright areas are really tough to manage. So I'm going to bring that intensity to 0.5. I'm also going to bring the exposure to 0.5. Okay. So when I do both of those, you can see that it lightened the image just a little bit more. So we're good there. And samples is the quality that we're going to get off the bounced light. So I'm going to do 2 on that. And that will help with the kind of graininess that we're getting. And we got volume samples down here. We got samples right here. Cast shadows we need to have on. If we don't have that on, it looks really ugly. So it keeps cast shadows on. And if we want our background to be black, that's what I want. So let's turn that down to 0. Okay. Sometimes we don't like black. Sometimes we want just a really dark gray. So we could do let's just type in 0.15, and that'll give us kind of a dark gray or a light gray. I can't remember what it exactly is. For that, we can bring it down a little bit farther if we want to, but 0.15. Let's try that and see what that looks like. And then we're good there. We don't want it to battle the gray that we have on our models, so if we need to go lower, we sure can. Alright, so in fact, I think I'm going to do that. 0.05. Let's try that, 0.05, and see how that looks. Let's go ahead and stop the render on that. And now we're going to put a light source in here. So I'm going to start the render again, and let's go to Create, and we're going to go to Lights. We're going to go to Directional Light. Okay? And now we're going to go ahead and pull that directional light up. Okay? And it's not really showing shadows, is it? So let's go ahead and rotate that. And we're going to rotate it. You can see, ooh, now the shadows are showing. You can see that shadows are, there we go. So you can get an idea how you want to have your shadows, and bring that out a little bit more. And something like that would be good. Like something like that would be cool. Okay. So we see some shadows, and you can tweak those a little bit. Move that over like that if you wanted to, but we really want to see the front of the can. So you want that light source to show and light the front of the can. So I'm going to bring that on there. Okay. Then we're going to have a little shadow on the other object, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, as long as the shadow is not overwhelming. Okay. So I think we're good there. So let's kind of look at the light source here. You can see a little bit of a specular highlight on there, which is kind of cool. I like that. So with that, then we can go in here, and the intensity, of course, is pretty strong. We can do something like 0.8, just bring that down just a little bit. And in Arnold, we're going to go ahead and use color temperature. Okay, and that's a pretty white light, so let's bring that down and add a little warmth to this. So it's 6500. Let's do a 6000. Okay, type in 6000, and exposure needs to be the same as we have up here for the intensity, which is 0.8. We need to match those two. 0.8. There we go. And then with the samples, we need to make sure that's set at 2. Again, that's for the shadow samples. And we need cast shadows on. And the angle is if we want to add and diffuse the shadow as it goes, goes farther away from the object. And that is usually I set that to 2. That just kind of diffuses that shadow a little bit. Now it does add pixelation. It will slow down your render times, but it looks much, much better. So now we're getting a really nice looking render here. Okay, so I'm ready to do a full render with 540. So we're done with all the testing, and we're good with the preview render. Let's close that up, and let's go into render and go back to viewport. And now we're ready to go in here and do a full render. So I'm going to click on this icon here. And now you can see that we're getting a really nice render at full resolution. Alright, great. Alright, this is not what I want because this is HD 540, but this is very close to what I want. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and close that, the renderer. And now we're going to go back into render settings. So I'm very happy with what I have. And so now we're ready to go into the higher resolution. So we're going to go at HD 1080. Now I'm going to show you how to get rid of, to make this look a lot nicer. So we're not going to go much higher. Let's try 4 and 3 and 3. And so 4, 3, 3, and 4, 3, 3 should do it. It will render a little bit slower. So when I start the render button, I'm going to go ahead and pause it and come back to it so you don't have to wait. Okay, we're back, and the render time at 2 minutes and 47 seconds. And you can see the results are looking really good, and this allows me to see all of the details that you have modeled in. I'll be able to see these right away. If you didn't do this correctly, this would be a stage that's pretty simple to do. So what you need to do now for the first render, and this is super important, hopefully you guys will catch this, hopefully you're not skimming the videos. So go to File and Save Image As, and make sure you go into the option box. Okay. Now the first time you render now, because usually it's on this raw image. The problem with that raw image is taking the bit depth image and color management system and turning it off. So that's going to be a very dark image, and you would have to bring it into Photoshop and get the exposure back up again. And basically what the raw image gives you is a very dark image, and I can't see it. And that makes me have to go into Photoshop, and I will take points off if I have to do that. So make sure you turn color manage image on. You'll see exactly what you're seeing here. As if you bring it into Photoshop, you'll see this bright image, and that's what I want. So color manage image needs to be turned on, and apply and close. That doesn't mean it's just saved the image, it just applied that. So now you got to go back to File, Save Image, and now you can save it out. And let's go ahead and do it. Click on the desktop. I usually save everything to the desktop. We'll just call it Jeff. We'll call it your first name, last name, and do an underscore mod underscore 01, and this will be render 01. Okay. Alright, so save that. Alright, there you go. And if we were going to be professional about this, even though you're giving me screenshots of the higher resolution, the wireframe, if you want to add wireframe to an actual render, it's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. We're not going to change anything in here. We're just going to change it. What I want you to do is probably save this file. So File, Save Scene As. And you want to save this, and hopefully you've got quite a few saves. You should have a lot more than me. So let's just call this is Scene 4. Let's just type in here lighting, right? And then maybe render on that. And let's do number 5 on that. So you can see I'm doing it in a sequence. Let's just save that. Okay, before we do anything else, let's say we want to come back to the rendering process of this. I can bring this in and pull that up. And so the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to do wireframe on shaded. So I'm going to go, actually it's not on shaded, it's just wireframe. And let's go to Assign New Material. And on here, it's very cool that that has its own shader called Wireframe. AI Wireframe at the very bottom. Arnold. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the AI Wireframe on this one too as well. So go ahead and right mouse button, click over the object, Assign New Material, Arnold Shader down to Wireframe. Again, now it's all ready to go. So all we have to do is click on the object and go into AI wireframe, I'm clicking on that arrow. You can see that. What I'm going to do is I've got some history on here, and if you don't see AI wireframe right away, what you're going to do is you're going to go under poly modeling, and you're going to delete by type history, and you're going to click on this guy too as well and delete by type history, and this should move that AI wireframe a little closer so you don't have to use the arrow. Okay, so I'm going to click on that AI wireframe. I'm not going to change the name of those. The things I need to do here though is edge type needs to be polygons, okay, and line color and everything else is good. That's the only thing I really need to change, and then click on this guy right here and do the same thing with that. Change the edge type to polygons, and line width, I think I'm okay with that. Let's go ahead and do a render and see what it looks like. This won't take near as long to process, and this will give you a professional wireframe unshaded. Well, not unshaded, just professional wireframe. There we go. And that way you can send that out to people that would like to see your wireframe render. I'm going to go ahead and pause that. It might take a while. Alright, so it took 54 seconds. So you can see we've got our background and everything in there, and that's pretty cool looking, isn't it? So let's go ahead and add that. Again, go to File. I'm going to make sure my color management image is on, apply and close, and I'm going to go to File, Save Image, and save that to your desktop. Okay, so here's my first image here, and I'm going to type in render, and I'm going to put wireframe in here. Alright, so go ahead and save that as wireframe and save it out. Right, that's basically it. That's what you're going to be turning those images. You're going to be turning those in, and I'll have a how you save your work too. That's something that we need to talk about. So you've got the 2 screenshots, you got the 2 renders, and now we've got to save the scene out as a Maya binary, which we have been doing. So you need to put your finish save. Okay, so I need that, and then I need to have a render. Let's see here, we can only do my ASCII, so I'm going to do MB file, and I need an FBX file. How do we do that? So let's select the scene, and we're going to go to File, Export All. Okay, we'll export the whole thing, and we want FBX, and you can see in here we should have FBX. Now if you don't see OBJ, and it's I need an OBJ and I need an FBX, so we're going to do FBX first, export all, and we just need to under geometry we need to make sure smoothing groups is on, and then just rename it. Okay, that's going to put it in your scenes folder. So I'm going to do something like this, module 01, and that's good enough for me. I don't know what else you need to put in there, and that'll be your FBX file, export all. And it gives me a warning, blah blah blah, unable to export some materials selected. That's fine. Go ahead and close. I think it still exported it out. It didn't like the materials. And then let's go to File, Exports All. Okay. And we're going to do OBJ this time, and export all, and then do the same thing, JBuyers module 01, and export that out. Perfect. And I might even do that with the scene, so save scene as, and I might just keep it very short and sweet, JBuyers. That's probably what I need you to do too, 01, and save as. There we go. Right. So that's it. Basically, I need the 3 files of your scene, right? Of your scene right here. I need the MB file, the FBX, and the OBJ, and then I need to have the screenshot of the solid shade, and then screenshot of the wireframe, and then I need a render, a full render, HD 1080, and a wireframe render, HD 1080. Okay, and that's it. And you'll turn those in, follow the structure. I might have a video on that. Look for that, and I'll see you guys soon in the next module. Okay, all right, have a great day.